Today we are going to talk about dividing decimals by decimals. So let's start with a problem here. Let's say we want to go ahead and do 3 and 47 hundredths divided by 2 and a half. All right. So the first thing we have to do is set this up. Okay. So if I'm going to do 3 and 47 hundredths, the number that I'm dividing is always going to be the number that's inside the box here. So 3 and 47 hundredths goes inside, and the number that I'm dividing by, the divisor, goes in outside the box. So now when it comes down to it, I don't want to, these decimals throw everything off, and they kind of make things a little bit difficult for us. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of these decimals. So I'm going to start with this decimal out here, this 2 and 5/10. All right. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this 2 and 5/10 by 10. Because if I go ahead and take any number and I multiply it by 10, the same thing will always happen. The decimal will move over one spot to the right. So now this number is 25. All right, so I change this 2 and 5/10 to 25 by multiplying it by 10. Now, if I've multiplied this number by 10, I have to multiply this number by 10. So the same thing. If I multiply any number by 10, the same thing will always happen. The decimal will move one spot to the right. So this 3 and 47 hundredths becomes 34 and 7/10. Now, that's where your decimal is going to be. So from right there, once you've done that, you've made this a whole number out here. Take this decimal, move it up. And now you basically can forget about the decimal. All right, so 25 goes into 34 one time. 1 times 25, of course, is 25. I'm going to subtract here. 34 minus 25 is 9. 25 doesn't go into 9, so I'll bring down the 7. And 25 goes into 97 3 times. 3 times 25 is 75. When I subtract, I get a 2, I get 22. Now from here, so I have 1.3. So we're going to round our answer to the nearest tenth. Now to do that though, I need, so this 3 is in the 10th spot. I need a number over here in the 100th spot. So we have to go ahead and bring down a 0 because 25 doesn't go into 22. So let's bring down a 0 here. Now 25 goes into 220 8 times. All right. And I could basically stop right there. But 8 times 25 is 200. There's 20 left over. And again, I could stop there because I said I was going to round it to the nearest tenth. So if I have 1 and 38 hundredths as my answer so far, and I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, this is the number in the 10th spot. So I look to this number. It tells me that I'm going to round this number up to a 4 because this number is 5 or above. So the answer to 3 and 47 hundredths divided by 2 and 5/10 is about 1 and 4/10 rounded. Okay. Now I don't know if you've noticed this, but 25 doesn't go into 20. If I added another 0 and I brought this down, 25 goes into there exactly 8 times. So the exact answer would be 1 and 388 thousandths. But a lot of times you're not going to get a decimal that terminates. You'll get a decimal that just kind of goes on and on. And so we need to know how to round because of that. All right. Let's do another example. Let's take, let's go with, for the next one, let's go with 521 and 7/10 divided by, let's go with 31 hundredths. All right. So same thing. This number that I'm dividing by is going to go inside the box. 521 and 7/10 divided by 7/10, sorry about that, divided by 31 hundredths. Now again, I don't want to deal with this decimal over here. All right, I don't want to divide by a decimal, so I'm going to change this to a whole number. But instead of multiplying this by 10, I'm going to multiply it by 100. So if I just multiply this 31 hundredths by 10, the decimal would just move over one spot. It would become 3 and 1/10. But if I multiply it by 100, something different will happen. Now every time I multiply a number by 10, the decimal moves over one spot to the right. When I multiply it by 100, it moves over 2 spots to the right. All right, because 10 has 1 0, 100 has 2 zeros, so it's going to move over 2 spots. So this number out here becomes 31. And remember, if I multiply this side by 100, I have to multiply this side by 100. All right, so 521 and 7/10. If I multiply it by 100, again, the decimal is going to move 2 spots. So here's moving at 1 spot, and then it moves another. So in here, I have to put a 0. All right, so this number in here is going to be 52,170. And there's no decimal over here. All right, so now it's just a matter of doing some math. And let's, again, we're going to round this one to the nearest 10th. All right, so 31 goes into 52 one time. 1 times 31 is 31. I subtract, I get a 1 here and a 2 there. So 31 does not go into 21, so let's bring down a 1 here. All right, so let's kind of estimate this. So we know 30 goes into, let's scratch it. Let's say 3 goes into 21 7 times. All right, so 3 goes into 21 7 times. So the answer should be someplace around 7. So let's just try 7. So 31 times 7, that's going to give me 217, which is too big. So 6, this could be 6, so that's going to be 186. When I subtract here, I'm going to get a 5 here, and that's going to be a 2. So I'll get 25. All right, so again, 31 doesn't go into 25. Let's bring down a 7. Now I got to do 31 to the 257. So let's kind of do the same thing as we did before. This 3 goes into 25 8 times. 3, because 3 goes into 24 8 times. So 3 goes into 25 8 times. Let's try that. So let's try 31 times 8. So that's going to give me 8. So it's going to be 248, which looks like that's the answer. So this will be an 8. And that's going to be 248. All right. Again, I'm going to subtract here. I'm going to get 9. And I got one more to bring down. One more 0. So 31 goes into 92 times. That's going to give me 62. And I have 28 left over. All right. So now again, I said I'm going to round this to the nearest 10th. So we're here to this point where we have to move this down. So we're here to this point where we have to go ahead and do add a decimal, because I have nothing to bring down. So I'm going to add a decimal here, bring the decimal up, add a 0. All right, bring the 0 down. So 31 goes into 280. So I know over here 31 went into 31 times 8 is 248. We'll just add another 31 to that. So that's going to be a 9, 7, 279. So there you go. So that's going to be 8, 279. There's going to be 1 left over. 31 can't go into 1. So I'm going to bring a 0 down. And now when you bring a 0 down, when you bring a 0 down, and this number, the divisor, still can't go into this number, you have to bring a 0 up top there. And I can actually stop right there, because if I said I'm rounding to the nearest 10th, the 8's in the 10th spot, I look to the right, this number is below 5, so it tells me I'd round down. So the final answer is going to be the question, which was, it's up here, so 521 and 7/10 divided by 31 equals 1,682 and 8/10. So that's how we divide by decimals by decimals. And just one last thing is important to kind of recognize, I think, is if you take the number, let's say you take 50 and divide it by 10, hopefully you can pick out that the answer is 5. Right, now let's say I change this 50 to a 500 divided by 100. A lot of people say it's 50, but the actual answer is 5. If I make this 5,000 divided by 1,000, the answer is still 5. So notice what I'm doing here is from this 50 to that 500, I multiply both sides by 10. Multiply this by 10 to get 500, multiply this by 10 to get 100. Your answer stays the same. So if we come up here to this original question, when I multiplied both of these numbers by 10, the final answer is going to stay the same. Again, as long as you're consistent and you multiply this by 10 and that by 10, you're okay. All right, so that's dividing by decimals. Decimals by decimals.